Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Last of Us version of Temple of Geek podcast. I'm Danielle, and as usual, I'm here with my host, Olivia, so we can discuss the fourth episode of The Last of Us Season 2. It's a good one. It's a good one, so I hope everybody's ready. And I'm just going to start us off with a summary, my own little summary of this. First of all, this week's episode is called Day One, which game players, again, as usual, will know exactly what that means. And in another flashback, this time 11 years in the past, we see a Fedra Sergeant 1 Isaac Dixon turn on his group in order to join forces with a local resistance group in a place we can only assume is Seattle. In the present times, Dina and Ellie, now in Seattle itself as well, make their way through the city searching for signs of Abby and her group. In between the beautiful moments between Ellie and Dina that show their budding romance and the brutal showcasing of Isaac's force against the Seraphites, we and Ellie begin to realize that finding Abby might not be as easy as she once hoped. After Ellie saves Dina by allowing an infected to bite her instead, her immunity is no longer a secret. Neither is Dina's surprise pregnancy, and nor are the feelings they both share for each other. With so much now out in the open and the location of Nora, a member of Abby's group, revealed, the stakes are higher than ever before as we go into the last few episodes of The Last of Us Season 2. So let's start with our thoughts. First, I want to bring up what we didn't bring up last week because I forgot, was that in the title sequence, the opening credits, Ellie is now on her own. Her little shadow. I know.
It's
So
so sad.
sad. I can't believe that I didn't bring it up last week because it's such a, like an important part of showing that, her and Joel used to walk this together, but now she is what her biggest fear is alone. And that's just so sad.
Oh, heartbreaking.
Okay, so for this episode, initial thoughts. What were you thinking?
I loved it. I think it might be my favorite episode so far. I was very, very pleased. What about you?
Yes, I agree. The whole time I was watching it, I was actually able to kind of, well, that's a lie. I was gonna say I was able to turn off the part in my head that is like that's different, that's different, that's different, but that's a lie. It just wasn't as loud, I think, this time. Um, and even with the changes they made, which I think we had expected some of these changes, mostly having to do with the fact that they no longer have characters, Jordan and Leah, who are in the game. I thought that it stayed very true to the heart of this particular part of the game. And so I really appreciated that.
Yeah, and there were moments that I was like, wow, this feels like I'm playing the game right
Yeah.
now. Even just like small moments, especially like the opening sequence when Dina is just like going through all of the pharmacy essentially looking for like pills and things like that. Yeah, there were just like so many small moments and big moments that felt like I was playing the game. And it was, as a game player, I always appreciate when they do that. And even though, like you said, there were some changes, it still feels like this was probably the most true to the game episode that we've had so far.
Yeah.
And I think when the closer they stay to the game, in my opinion, I think the better payoff that we get in the end.
Mm. Yeah, this I think proved when we talked about this before. I think it really kind of proved that episode 3 was kind of a growing episode, I guess. Kind of trying, you had to like fill the gap between how do we get Ellie from Jackson to Seattle, and that's always, I think, something that's going to feel a little bit slow because in the game you don't really have to show any of that. You can just kind of jump right into it, but in the show you got to like kind of build this bridge between here and there, and once we get to there, it was so much better. um and not that I hated the last episode by any means, it was just definitely a growing episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
What did you especially like about this episode?
I had one. I had a couple of items on my wish list going into this, and one of them was fulfilled, and that was a little bit more backstory to Isaac.
Mm.
We knew from the preview after last week's episode that we would see a little bit of Isaac's origin story. So we kind of knew it was coming, but to see it play out and to see how he used to be in Fedra and his turning to the WLF, just thought was so interesting. And even just the extra scene we got with Isaac, I've always thought he was a really interesting character, and I always wanted more about him. So I especially liked that we finally just got a little bit more. What about you?
Yeah, I liked that, and I'll talk about that for a minute because I like that his brutality is really on show the same way that it is in the game, even though we got that backstory for him, which is that, you know, he hated what Fedra did to the people. He didn't want to be a part of them anymore. He turned as soon as he could. Um, they could have gone the opposite direction and been like, let's feel some sympathy for him. And I was worried, kind of worried that they would do that because he's not a good character. And he's not like, I mean, he's a great character, but he's not good. And and so I was really glad that they were kind of like, yes, he went against Fedra, which is a good thing, but he is now doing this horrible thing to these people. And he's not allowing any room for, well, what about them, what about them. He's not standing for that. And so I was really appreciative that they did that, even though I was surprised by how much of the brutality from the game they put in the show.
Yeah, I was shocked by that too. But I think it's so essential to Isaac's character and
Mm,
the WLF as a whole and the conflict to the Seraphites that
yeah,
even though it was really jarring to witness right off the bat, I think it was important to establish just
yeah.
how brutal he is and how
Hmm.
brutal the WLF is because they're under
Yeah,
his command.
yeah,
You can't really shy away from that. And I'm happy they really, you know, stuck to it for the show.
yeah. I thought it was a good connection between the 11 years to also show that the guy who he saved, who he took with him before he killed the rest of the federal officers, um, outside of the interrogation
Yeah.
room is a kitchen. God, and he is now fully. He has also changed. He was
Yeah.
shocked at what Isaac did
Yeah.
in the beginning, but now he is fully bought in to
Yeah.
this, and I
And
thought that was important too.
yeah, just it's like just as extreme, if not more so. That was like, whew, he maybe drank the Kool-Aid, a different type of Kool-Aid, but like, you know, all these groups are extreme in their own way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, for my part that I especially liked was Ellie's guitar and singing
Oh,
"Take on Me."
yes.
So, so for those who haven't played the game, this is a scene in the game, but you can miss it. You can play past it because you have to find the guitar while you're scavenging, and if you don't find the guitar, then you don't get this scene. And um, I'm glad they made it an imperative part of this episode because it is like that is exactly it. It defines Ellie and Dina's relationship so well. But I liked it. I liked it more in the show because of how their relationship is. It's different. It's not in the game at this point. Ellie and Dina are already together. They already know how they feel about each other. They've been together for a little while. And I think Dina, they're talking about like a bonfire night or something, and Dina says, "You should have kissed me then," and Ellie's like, "Yeah, should have," and that's really sweet. But with Dina having not yet told Ellie how she feels, and then we learn later in the episode that she knows that Ellie likes her and feels that way about her, but there's so many things kind of holding her back from being honest about it. To see her like crying, and Isabella Merced was phenomenal in that scene, and so I think the emotion behind it hit me more in the show than in the game. And I was surprised because I love that scene in the game, but it's so
Yeah.
beautiful here.
It really is. And I think you hit the nail on the head because at this point in the show, Ellie is still quite closed off to Dina.
Hmm.
I mean, you know, there's things she's still hiding from her in the game, but at this point, you know, like they're together, right? We
Hmm.
know that they have feelings for each other. Um, but there's still that layer between them. And
Yeah.
I think this is one of the moments where Ellie really kind of opens herself up to Dina. And she tells her like how important music is to her, the guitar playing, because she learned it from Joel. And
Mm-hmm.
this is one of the things that Joel gave her, a beautiful thing that Joel gave her that she can keep on, remembering him by. And it's just, yeah, I totally agree. It just had much more emotional impact
Yeah.
in the show. And I
Yeah.
like you, I love the version in the game, but it just has a different meaning to it now. And it makes
Mm-hmm.
it that much more precious and also very sad.
Yeah. Yeah, because it seems like, as opposed to in the game, Ellie primarily shared this love for music with Joel and not really with anyone else, because in the game her and Dina talk about, the fact that Ellie's writing her own songs, that Dina knows that she plays and she knows, like, it's a pretty consistent thing. But in the show, I think that maybe, Dina says, "Oh, you've gotten a lot better," meaning that she probably hasn't heard her play in a while. And so I was glad to see Ellie also opening up, because we spent a lot of time talking about, Dina kind of, not being completely honest about her feelings, but Ellie hasn't either. And not just about her feelings, but about so much of herself. And I thought it was important to show that kind of slowly opening up. So she gets this so that it makes it a more seamless move into, by the way, I'm immune.
Which is the big reveal. That's the big
Yeah.
secret that she's hiding. And yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And I kind of want to talk about that for a minute, because that was also like, I know we probably annoy people by saying this is different than the game, but I don't mind, like, it's not, we don't mention that just to say that we don't like it, but it's how the change kind of impacts the story. And the way that they revealed Ellie's immunity in the show, I actually quite like more than in the game. And I understand it had to change by necessity, because in the game there are these spores that can infect people via, like, breathing them in. And Ellie's mask breaks, and Dina freaks out and is going to share her mask with her. And Ellie says, "No, no, 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 because I'm immune, I'm immune." And then they have to go from there. But in the show, with Ellie putting her arm in between the infected and Dina to save her, I thought that was hugely impactful.
Yeah. Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. Especially because when they're in the theater, Ellie tells Dina, "I would die for you."
Yeah.
Even though she's like, "But that's not what that was."
Yeah.
But just even that admission of like, "I love you so deeply and I care for you
Hmm.
so deeply." It definitely sets up their conversation, later.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was and also I want to talk about Dina's reaction because
Yeah.
in the game there's quite a bit of time from Ellie's mask breaking to them finally being able to like have the conversation of like, I just saw you breathe in spores and you're not coughing and you're okay and what the hell's going on. And it's a much shorter period of time in the show, and I loved how Dina freaked out. And I always
Yeah.
thought in the game it was maybe, even though there was some time to really like for her to realize like, oh, Ellie's going to be okay. I did always thought it was weird that Dina was so quick to accept, especially as we see other people in the game really like freak out when other
Hmm.
people are exposed to the infected.
Yeah.
And I loved her fear, and I loved how much it drew out the tension between them.
Yeah.
There was something really like not I don't it's not romantic in any sense, but there was that tension between them because it was like I'm about to lose my best friend, but then also as Dina admits later on in the episode, like I was envisioning this life with us, the two of us together and this child that I'm about to have, and all of a sudden that was going to be
Hmm.
taken away from me and from you. And you could feel that undercurrent between them as she's trying to figure out, do I need to shoot my best friend and the girl
Hmm.
I love or not? Do I need to
Yeah.
can I trust her, can I not trust her? I thought it
Hmm.
was brilliantly done, and I think that it was more impactful than the game.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that too. Again, Isabella Merced, absolutely phenomenal this
She's
episode.
incredible. Yeah.
And I agree with the tension. I also think, yeah, oh, I was gonna bring this up, but you said it already. The tension of losing something that you you wanted so deeply, and then, kind of realizing, oh, I don't have that anymore. I might not have that. And I loved just Ellie having to be like, shit, how do I convince somebody who is ready, like who doesn't know me? And she's had to do this so many times before though, but she hasn't had to do it in a while. The last person she had to do that with was Joel. And ever since then, she's not really had to convince anybody to not shoot her.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really beautiful scene, wonderfully acted, wonderfully written too. I thought that they we talked about this earlier, but they bridged that, not disconnect, but all the changes they made to the game. They bridged that with that scene, I think, because it all ties together now. It's all like, okay, even though these changes were made to how Dina and Ellie's relationship works, to how they get to Seattle, all this stuff, it really is just like, now we're like, okay, this is familiar ground. I think for game players especially, I think this episode will be like, all right, I recognize this a little bit more. And so I think that's good. Um, with the pregnancy, I want to talk about that because there was some discourse online this past week, after Ellie and Dina's relationship obviously does not follow the course it does in the game. Now it will, but up until this point it hasn't. And I don't know. I think that they handled the way that Dina explains everything to Ellie about her feelings really well. Did that come
Yeah.
across the same to you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially because I will admit I was one of those people that when Dina tells Ellie, like, you're gay, I'm not for a moment did I think they were going to erase her bisexuality, but I was a little nervous of how they were going to handle it,
Mm-hmm.
which was, I saw discourse, people had the same feelings of me, a little bit more extreme, either way. So I thought that the way that they handled it in the show and really explaining maybe why Dina wasn't this confident girl in her sexuality like she is in the game. And I
Mm-hmm.
also always have to remember that this takes place 10 years before than it
Yeah.
does in the game, and gay marriage isn't legalized in this version of The Last
Yeah.
of Us, right? And also, speaking of gay marriage, we have to call out the whole like rainbow thing in Seattle. There's a
Yeah.
little moment when they're in the bookstore in a game, and I think it's Dina who's like, "What's up with all the rainbows? Like all the flags?" And they have no idea. And so I thought that was a little
Mm-hmm.
inclusion. And they were like, oh, like they must have been really prideful and really happy. Thought that was so
Really
cute.
optimistic is what Ellie says.
Yeah. It's so cute. But I thought because this is a world where, I mean, homophobia still exists in
Mm-hmm.
all areas of history, but in particularly this area in the United States where gay marriage has not been legalized at this point.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense that maybe Dina would be a little bit more reserved in terms of her sexuality than she would be in the game. And so I thought the
Mm-hmm.
way that they handled it was appropriate. I thought it was great.
Yeah. Especially because they had her mention her mother. And,
Yeah.
and Dina says, I told my mom when I was little that I liked boys and girls. And she said, no, you like boys. And that makes sense for the time, like for 2003, like anywhere in the US, not even
Mm-hmm.
just in certain states that are still like that kind of today, but really anywhere. And her mom would have grown up in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
probably like late 90s, early 2000s. So whenever all of this was, anti LGBTQ rhetoric was very strong at that time. And I think for some people also who are younger, who are watching this, who are fans of the game, and watching this change, that might not seem as real to them, or it might seem strange because of how much things have changed the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, like when you and I were younger, there was almost no representation in media.
Mm-mm.
And
Mm-mm.
like, for example, when I go back to my hometown, and I'm from a relatively small town in Texas, so you can imagine, when I go home and I go to one of the bookstores there is a shelf dedicated to LGBTQ books that would not have existed 10 years ago,
No.
or especially not whenever I was a teenager. And so things have changed so rapidly since the legalization of gay marriage. So I can understand younger people who are watching this who are like, even in their like early 20s, that's not really as like I think real to them as it is for like you and me, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah. And so I was very happy with how they had Dina explain it, because I also think it's a good medium between confused and confident in it, like sure in it. Like she is sure herself. Like there's no confusion inside of her about
Mm-mm.
her sexuality. There is confusion about how she talks about it. And
Yeah.
I think that that is just like that straddles the line between confidence and just like a little bit of not fear but just uncertainty of how to move forward with it.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
also really happy that she talked a little bit more about her relationship with Jesse,
Yeah.
particularly in the show, because again, there was a little bit of discourse about folks disregarding her relationship with Jesse.
Hmm.
And she made it very clear. She's like, I love Jesse. I respect Jesse. I think he's an amazing guy, but like, he wasn't the one for me. So, it totally clears up why she went back to him.
Yeah.
It also really solidifies the fact that this is a bisexual character, and that,
Yeah.
even though, like, you're just saying there might be, she might not have language for it, and or not might not be sure on how to express it until this moment, but like, she's definitely confident in her sexuality, and she knows who she is and what she
Hmm.
likes, and she knows that she likes Ellie. And I just,
Yeah.
that moment too, even like the whole morning breath thing with the beef jerky and stuff too, I thought was so funny. Because like, what would you do in the apocalypse if you don't have access to a toothbrush? Like, I
Yeah.
guess we'll both just like taste like beef jerky. Sounds kind of gross, but like, I just like all those little moments too. It was such a beautiful scene. There was so much lightness in it, but then also addressing some really heavy and complex topics, and maybe
Hmm.
even sad topics, but like, really just wrapped in all of this love between these two characters that I think, as fans of the game, we were missing from last
Hmm.
week's episode. And I think that's really
Yeah.
what drove a lot of the discourse, is that this is a relationship a lot of people really, really cherish. And it was really great to see that relationship on screen. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to see where they go. The two of them go next.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to mention Ellie saying, "Oh my God, I'm gonna be a dad."
Yes, that was so cute.
Because
Also,
it
I'm
was. Oh,
sorry,
go ahead.
continue. Sorry.
I was gonna say I loved it because it was so funny, but also
Mhm.
it made me sad because I think her example of a dad is Joel. That is
Yeah.
the only example of a dad that she has, and I wonder like if she was thinking in that moment like, oh, I'm gonna be a dad like Joel was my dad, and that makes me really
No,
sad.
that's so sad. Oh, I didn't think about it that way. The way I thought about it was in the game, Ellie reacts very differently when she
Oh
finds out
yeah.
that Dina's pregnant. And she straight up calls Dina a burden. And I
Yeah.
remember when I played that part, I immediately sent you a voice note, and I was like, I cannot believe Ellie just called Dina a burden. So
Yeah.
it was so nice to maybe see them. Like, I understand Ellie's reaction in the game 100%, but I was like, girl,
Mhm.
like, that is that is not what you're supposed to say. And so maybe a little bit of course correct a little bit, but I love that this version of Ellie was like so stoked. She was like,
Yeah.
wow, like, we're gonna have a little happy family, the three of us,
Yeah.
and I get to be a dad. And yeah, now the fact that like she's thinking probably about Joel as an example of her being a dad, it's
Mhm.
it's bittersweet in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. That scene in the game, I think is so God, every time I play it, I immediately am like, Elizabeth, take that bag right now. But it's also like it's so important in the game's like setting to show that like Ellie does not care about anything right now except for her revenge. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that includes, it's not that she doesn't care about Dina, but she's viewing things as an obstacle instead of anything else. And I think that in the game, that makes sense because by the time they get to that point, they've already had to confront some of Abby's group.
Yeah.
and Ellie is frustrated that they've encountered them, but she can't find Abby. She feels like she's slowing down. She feels like, she's failing. And we haven't yet gotten to that point in the show with Ellie. So
Hmm.
it makes sense that she wouldn't say something like that. But also because, like, imagine if her and Dina finally get together. Dina tells her she's pregnant. And then first thing Ellie says is, well, you're a burden now, aren't you? Like,
Relationship over.
that would be the shortest relationship ever.
Yes.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if, like, in future episodes before the end of the season, we do get Ellie saying something that she regrets. The more frustrated
Absolutely.
she becomes with not finding Abby.
Yes.
Um, so I'm not looking forward to that, but and
No.
maybe we won't. I don't know.
I think you're right, though. I think we will. I think we
Yeah,
will.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so much to come. um, was there anything you didn't like? It
No,
sounds like we were kind of
actually,
like really pleased with this episode overall.
I was really pleased. Yeah. I think all the changes made sense to add more world
Hmm.
building and then also, to like tie up the loose ends of the changes that they've made in the previous episodes. I think it all works really beautifully and I feel like we've like confidently entered like a really good rhythm for the rest of the show because I think like you said, like the last episode was a setup episode and now I think we're like through those growing pains and we can
Hmm.
finally like, I mean, hopefully we'll see what happens next week, but like it feels like we're finally ready to just kind of like kind of sink in and like really experience the rest of the story. Was there anything that you didn't like?
I don't think so. I have, like, my notes are full of like putting something that happened and then LOL next to it. So I really liked the levity of
Mm-hmm.
of the moments, because I also think kind of what was missing from last week was heavy tension and then levity to kind of even it out.
Yeah,
And just because so much is put, like, obviously on, obviously Joel's death and Ellie's uncertainty about how Dina's feeling and all these things, there wasn't much like fast-paced tension, which you don't
yeah,
always have to have,
yeah,
but I thought that the balance was really, really good this episode. So I have no complaints at all. I don't think.
yeah. Yay.
Yeah, I love that when that
I
happens.
love that. Yes, it's so great.
Okay, so standout character slash actor of the week. Who are yours?
Dina, for sure.
Yeah.
I just her, like you said earlier, like the scene when Ellie's playing the guitar, just
Mm-hmm.
like her, just like the tears were just there, and it was so beautifully done. But just like the way her face lights up when she's seeing Ellie play and hearing her
Mm-hmm.
sing, like that moment of connection between the two of them, and just what that means to Dina and seeing it on her face, beautifully done. And then obviously like when they're finally admitting that they love each other, like that was
Yeah.
we were really missing that last week. We like the two
Yeah.
of us, I mean the internet definitely, but like the two of us were like damn.
Yeah.
So I was so happy to get that moment and just like you know just the way that Dina tells her story, and again the way that she looks at Ellie, I just love how much they love each other.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
I want them to be happy forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. One of the things I really like about the show overall is just how much attention it's given Dina,
Yeah.
kind of narrowing in on her personality and on her feelings. And even when they're connected to Ellie, they don't revolve around Ellie. And I
Mm-mm.
think that is one, like, if I have any criticism of the game, that is one of them, is that sometimes Dina can feel a little bit like an accessory to Ellie.
Yes.
And that happens in games because you're so focused on playing by the character of the character, whose point of view you're looking through. And so I completely get it, but it's really, really nice to see them kind of take advantage of not being in a game and being in a show instead, where you can show this so much more easily. And the writers and Isabel Merced have done a wonderful job with that. So I'm very
Yeah.
happy to see that. I do have to shout out Jeffrey Wright for
Excellent.
Isaac.
Oh, God, he's so good.
Because after watching this episode, I think about the fact that this was the first time we've seen him this series, And I almost can't believe it. Like, even though we just saw the episode, because he fit in so seamlessly, which, of course, he is the voice actor for Isaac in the game. No one else could play this character, I don't think, the same way he
Mm-mm.
could. And
Agreed.
so I'm so glad that he agreed, that they got him and everything worked out for him to be on here. I just think that his monologues are wonderful. He's just such a great actor. And just the complexity, but also just cruelness that he brings to Isaac's character is just so clear. And
Yeah.
I'm really grateful that he's in the show too.
Yeah. It's not very often that voice actors will get to play characters, on screen in
Hmm.
adaptations.
Yeah.
And so, but I agree that is one of those characters that needs to be played by the voice actor. And like Jeffrey Wright is just an incredible artist.
Hmm.
And I'm like, and of course they want to give him more too, right? Like that must
Yeah.
be one of the reasons why they wanted to flesh out his character a little bit more, because it's like we
Hmm.
have Jeffrey Wright right here.
Yeah.
Like we got to take advantage of this, and
Yeah.
it's paying off so much. He's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, cry tracker time. I cried in the Take on Me scene.
Me
I
too.
was crying with Dina. Like,
Yep, me too.
literally. As I was thinking, oh my god, this has so much more weight to it than in the game. I was sobbing. I think that
Yeah.
was the only time I cried, but it was a significant cry.
Yes, same. Yeah, and actually, I was kind of watching Bella Ramsey like their hands, and I think
Hmm.
that they're playing. They're definitely
Yes.
playing. Like their left hand's definitely playing, and obviously they're singing. So I was also very impressed with that. I was like, ooh,
Yes.
actually playing, actually singing. So much emotional weight to
Hmm.
this scene. It's beautifully shot. It was, yeah. I just cried. I cried happy tears because it was so perfect, and I also cried like just emotional tears because of the impact of it all.
Yeah. Pedro Pascal has actually said that Bella taught him how to play the guitar.
Oh, I love that. That's so sweet.
A little bit of
They're
a
so
reversal there.
yeah, they're so cute. Oh my god.
I love them. They
Yeah.
are Joel and Ellie without all of the horrible things.
Yeah. They're the healthy version.
Yeah, the healthy version. That's right. Okay, so what are we looking forward to from next week without any spoilers for the game?
I'm I don't know how to say this without a spoiler, so if it ends up being spoiler territory, let me know. But like, I'm very curious to see if next week's episode continues the plot direction that it's currently on with like
Hmm.
the I don't know how to say this without spoiling it, but like, do you know what I mean? Like day one,
Yeah.
Seattle, like will
Hmm.
it continue down that trajectory, or are we going to have a shift from the narrative structure of the game?
Yeah.
I guess is I'm just curious to see, because I also
Hmm.
I normally don't watch the preview after the episode because I like to go into it pretty fresh, but
Yeah.
I did decide to finally watch it because I was like, ooh, because you said something last week that I want to talk about during the spoiler section that I was like, ooh, I think Danielle might be right. So I watched the preview, and now I'm wondering if they're handling the narrative structure in the same way. So I'm curious to
Okay.
see if next week we'll continue that.
Okay, and so we'll talk about that in the
Yeah.
spoiler section.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I am the same as you. I'm also wondering if we will get more from Isaac's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we see Isaac interrogating, for lack of a
Yeah.
better word, the Seraphite in the game, we see it through a different perspective. Oh, that's all I'll say without spoiling.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this time we got it through his own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious if we'll see any more of the WLF and things like that through his perspective. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is all I'll say as well. Looking forward. Oh! I do want to know if we're going to go back to Jackson at any point
Oh yeah, of
and
course.
find out what's happening there.
Tommy.
For reasons, yeah, for reasons that we won't talk about in this section, but
Nope.
but I do want to see what's going on there. So maybe again, I could see kind of like maybe the intro to next week
Yeah.
being something like that. I don't know. But yeah, we'll see. Looking forward to it. If you have not played the game and you don't want to be spoiled for what might come in future episodes this season or next season, then leave right now, please. Thank you for joining us. It was nice having you, but you can leave to save yourself from any potential spoilers, because right now we are going to enter that territory. Okay, this is it.
Yes. Yay.
We can finally talk about those things. Okay. I really liked how they approached not having Jordan and Leah,
Yeah.
because we talked last week about how we were kind of scared that Manny was going to take Jordan's place because they already kind of mixed their characters together a bit.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm not ready for him to die. And then when I realized he was at the radio tower, I think, in the
Yeah.
end of the last episode, and I was like, oh my God, he's going to be dead in there, or they're going to kill him. I was so worried, but they didn't. And so I'm really glad.
Thank God.
Yeah, it seems like we are still going to get him and Abby and their friendship, if not this season, then next season.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it'll be good. Going off of that, what did you want to say that you said about
That I
the
couldn't.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we've all played the game, so we know that the game is broken up into two parts: Ellie's Seattle day 1 through 3, and Abby's day 1 through 3. And obviously, the title of the episode was Seattle day 1, and no Abby in sight. And it from the preview, it maybe seems like they might allude to what Abby is up to, but not actually show her. And you said this during the last episode that we recorded, that we might not see Abby for the rest of the season, and maybe they will save her Seattle days for next season.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to think that they actually might follow the narrative structure of the game, which is a bold choice, because I'm worried it might not work. It might not have the same impact, because like you have to play Abby immediately, right? And so you're kind of stuck with her and all this anger and hatred you have for this character. And if it's split up into 2 seasons, there's some time apart. But then again, like, I don't know, I think that's the best way to tell the story. So I'm kind of thinking they're going to do it. And if they do, I think, again, a little worried, but I think in the end it's probably the best way to tell the story. Do you think they're going to continue doing that, or do you think they're going to go in that direction?
I really think so, because you have to spend so much time with Abby to come to like her and understand her, and for us, love her, that I can't see any of that fitting into the rest of the season when we're looking at it from Ellie's perspective. And I would want a good half of a season at least to have that time with Abby. And I could see when they announce or obviously they've announced that season 3 is coming, when they have like the trailers for it or whatever, and if it is like Abby's perspective and Abby becomes the main character for the season, not Ellie, I could see that doing the exact same thing as going to playing as her for a good, like, however many hours it is, like, what, 10 plus hours as her. And like having the same effect. I do wonder if, because they've already been greenlit for season 3, if they're going to start filming this year and maybe potentially be ready to premiere next year.
Oh, I would love that. That would be amazing.
Yeah, because that way the wait wouldn't be as long.
Yeah, because that's the danger of it. It's like, and we've talked about this, where if people just sit in their hatred for Abby, which is already very easy to do, for too long, there's no way that the writers or the show at all is ever going to be able to convince the audience that to sympathize with Abby. Even people who play the game, there are folks who play the game who still hate Abby by the end of it, which both of us are not in that camp. We love Abby. We hate what she did, but we love Abby as a character. And I do know there's a lot of folks out there who feel the same way. So for that to work, I think it has to be much sooner. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe they already are starting to work on it, or they have some stuff, already made, and they're going to release this a little sooner rather than later. Cause I think that's imperative, is just the immediacy of like learning about Abby as a character. It's I mean, it's not her saving grace. That's not what I mean. But like, it's the most impactful way to understand her story.
Yeah, because it's not, I saw someone say this online. It's not so much learning that Abby's dad was the surgeon who Joel
Mm-hmm.
killed that makes you like her. It's everything she does during the time that Ellie is seeking her revenge
Yeah.
that makes you like her.
Yeah.
It's the change in her that you actually get to experience as you're playing with her, because you go from her hating everybody who
Yeah.
is not WLF,
Yeah.
and then her slowly realizing, like, wait, this isn't actually what I believe. This
Yeah.
isn't how I want to live my life. I think that she also starts to realize that maybe Isaac took advantage of her pain and her grief and
Yeah.
focused it on something that she doesn't actually care about. And it's just like, because that's the question I have every time I play her part is, well, not
Mm-hmm.
so much a question, but like, why are you so, Abby, why are you so against the Seraphites when this has only been your fight for 5 years?
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not, you weren't born into this, you didn't grow up hating them, any of this. And
Mm-hmm.
you realize throughout the game that it's because she needed a place to put her anger for all that time, and
Yeah.
Isaac gave her the perfect one, and he knew exactly what he was doing when he did that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that there was a moment in this episode where they foreshadow that, right? When the Seraphite
Mm-hmm.
is telling Isaac, like, there's a wolf almost every day, or whatever timeline he says, like, that comes to our side. And there are no
Mm-hmm.
Seraphites that go to your side. And that's
Yeah.
kind of, and not that Abby becomes a Seraphite, but
Mm-hmm.
she comes to sympathize with them. She comes to understand them, and, they become her people, as
Yeah.
she says. So I was so happy they put that in there too. And you can just see the anger on Isaac's face when the
Mm-hmm.
Seraphite says that, and then he goes back to the pan and tortures him some more.
Yeah.
It's awful. And you can see, like, Isaac does not want people, he wants to have control over the WLF because for whatever reason, he needs them in order to enact whatever kind of revenge he needs against the Seraphites, or hurt, or whatever he's trying to get against them. Do we know at this point in the game? Do we know exactly why they have this tension between them other than land? Now that I'm thinking about it.
Not really, I don't think.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
it's just that Isaac just needs, yeah, we
Something,
don't
right?
know. I don't
Yeah.
even think in the game we know that he's former Fedra.
I don't think so either. I know
Yeah.
he's military of some sort, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think the Fedra thing might be new. But yeah, he just, for whatever reason, and maybe we'll learn this in the show,
Yeah.
he hates them. And so the idea that his soldiers could fall victim to the Seraphites' beliefs and to,
Mm-hmm.
sympathize with them is just like out of the question for him.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Abby's betrayal is so intense for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's that whole scene in the game is just
Yeah.
so intense. So yeah. Anyway.
Well, going off of that, I was going to say that it was important to me to signify that Isaac betrayed Fedra 11
Hmm.
years previously. And we know that the prophet for the Seraphites died 10 years previously.
Mm,
So I
good
wonder if
point.
we're going to see some interactions between her and him. We might get the prophet.
Another wish
Like
list
you
item
wanted.
of mine.
Yeah.
Yes. That would be cool. That's interesting. I didn't put that timing together.
Mm. And I'm like, there's so many possibilities about this now. Now that we know that
Yeah.
the WLF has only been around for less than 11 years, because they weren't the WLF as we see them now, or as we will see them 11 years previously. And so it'll be interesting to see if, when disbanding from Fedra, that's also when the infighting happened between the Seraphites and the WLF. What if that
Hmm.
woman he meets? No, no, that couldn't be. I don't know. I was gonna say, what if the woman that he meets when he blows up his Fedra unit was the prophet?
Oh,
But
interesting.
then,
Like maybe they were once like one group and then split off at some
yeah,
point.
yeah.
That could be interesting.
But then I don't
Hmm.
know if I don't know if the Seraphites would need like longer to kind of create their whole like
Their religion.
religion and belief system and everything.
Also,
Because I
I think we see her in the preview for the
mm,
next episode. I
okay,
think we see her
yeah,
running down the hall. But still, I think that's an interesting point. Like, I mean, I hope you're right. I hope we do see the conception of the Seraphites and
mm-hmm,
more about the prophet. And the timing would make sense for Isaac to maybe meet her, or at least, you know, like have some better understanding of who she was. Because even in just from this episode, we do learn that Isaac knows a little bit more about the Seraphites than maybe we thought he did in the
mm-hmm.
game, or at least from what I caught on. And for whatever reason, that like fuels his hatred of them.
Yeah, yeah, it would be interesting. I don't think it's hard now that I've said it, because I was thinking about the game, and again, they could change this, but obviously in the game, there's a newspaper clipping you can find
Mm,
from when they were still like obviously I think the infection had already spread, but papers were still able to print, and they talk about a woman who saved a group of people, and or she saw it coming, and so she was able to get a lot. And that's the whole thing of why she's the prophet, is that apparently she had this vision that this was going to happen or something, and she was able to get people to safety before the infection spread to them or something like that, and it's implied
mhm.
that that is who became the prophet. So I don't know, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm just that flashback to Isaac really opened up so many possibilities, I think, for what we could see.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Let's see. We liked the changes. We've already talked about that.
Yeah.
Do you have a particularly like favorite change?
Who I know we talked this, or I talked to this to death earlier, but I really enjoyed Dina's fear of Ellie when
Mm,
she gets bit. You know, I just
yeah.
think that was it. That reaction makes so much sense, and
Hmm.
really, like, why didn't they do that in the game? And just the emotional weight it adds between those two characters.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say a new thing, and this is not specific to this episode, but just kind of how they continue on with this as the series continues, grows, is how they handle scenes where in the game you have to fight a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, obviously it's a video game, so characters are gonna have advantages that you wouldn't have in real life. Like Ellie being able to kind of like sneak up on someone, and them not hear her at all, even though she's making tons of noises. And so I've always liked how they handle transitioning that to television to make it feel more real,
Mm-hmm.
and that was especially relevant, I think, here because of the TV station or the radio station. um, Obviously the fear I felt for them of
Yeah.
like that I don't feel in the game, because
Mm-mm.
you know that you're going to be able to deal with it,
Yeah.
but for there to be like what, five WLF who come in, and it's just Ellie and Dina, and they're hiding like swatted, and they're like, how are we going to get out of this? That felt so real. And then
Yeah.
Ellie sneaking up on the guy, like it didn't work. He turned around, she had to tackle him. She would have died if it weren't for Dina there. And I love how they've created that atmosphere to make it feel more realistic.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm watching the show with my mom, who obviously hasn't played the video game before. And after that scene, when they get out of the radio tower, she turned to me and she's like, "This show is so intense." And she was like, "There's no way I could ever be able to play the game." And I was like, "Amazing!" Like, it's
Yeah.
definitely, like you said, like the gameplay has to change a little bit for the show, but they're still keeping it just as intense and scary at times
Hmm.
as it is as you're playing the game. And that comes across for audiences who know nothing about the game. It definitely
Hmm.
worked on my mom. So I think they're handling it so well. And
Yeah.
again, you know me, I love the little nods to the gameplay. So when Ellie sneaks up on him and she does a little, like a stealth attack, she tries
Yeah.
to choke him to death. It doesn't
Yeah.
work, obviously. But then at the end, she stabs him in the neck with her knife. I'm like, beautiful. That's
Yeah.
what I would have done in that situation as a game player. So
Yeah.
it's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And I think it really kind of hit me, maybe not necessarily what was missing from this season so far, but what was
Hmm.
different from season one is and I don't want to sound like I'm like, oh, violence, people against people, yay. But that is such a big part of the first season, primarily
Yeah.
because they didn't really have the budget to have as many infected as maybe, we see in the game. So they saved it for, like big moments. And they now have the budget
Yeah.
after the success of season one. And so I think they kind of were relying on a lot of the tension coming from the infected for the
Mm-hmm.
first half of this season. And that, while it's fun to watch, isn't as like nail bitingly like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Because the infected aren't making like intelligent decisions, based on searching for people and, creeping up on them. I mean, the stalkers do, but it's different. It's different.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had missed that from that kind of tension from season one.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't know that about the budget, but that makes sense. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there's not as many clickers or runners or anything in the show as the game, and that makes sense. It would be expensive to make all of those.
Yeah. That reminds me, I wrote this down. I wanted to talk about it. When Dina, it just hit me. Like Dina's done that counting thing, like she listens and she's like, okay, there's one, there's two, there's three, previously this season. But it only hit me just now that is essentially listening mode.
Oh my God,
Like,
you're right. I didn't even think about that. That's so funny. You're totally right.
because I was like, in this situation, I would be hitting R1 to
Yes.
listen and see the if anyone's listening who hasn't played the game, you can, when you're crouched down, this starts in the first game, but you can do it in the second game as well. You're crouched down, you press R1 on the controller, and they're like listening intently, and you as the player can see how many enemies are around you, and it
Yeah.
grows. Your ability to do this grows as you take more like supplements and things like that. But I really liked that kind of nod where she, obviously she's like listening and she's like, okay, there's one, there's two. And I was like, listening mode.
That's so funny. I did not catch on to that, but you're totally right. That's so funny. Because yeah, in that moment you would want to know
Mm-hmm.
that skill. I'm in the first game, like I rarely used it in the first game, mostly because I just
Mm-hmm.
kept forgetting about it, and I was just like too afraid to like really know what was after me. But then the second game, I was like, no, this comes in handy so often. So yeah, that's funny. I love
Yeah.
it.
Good little nod to that.
Yeah,
And I think probably one of the best like adapted ways to nod to the game,
for sure. Yeah,
because it feels so natural that you do that. You're not like, oh yeah, it makes sense that she would be like, yeah, I've got to listen to this, especially because Ellie is so act first, think
yeah,
later. And
yep.
Dina, like I should have mentioned this earlier, but one of the notes I have is that in this episode, really, Dina continues on the like, hang on, let's think about
Mm-hmm.
this, where
Yeah,
Ellie's thirst for revenge would have her just
yeah.
charging right through.
Right through. Yeah, she's all action, no brains. I mean, she's
Yeah.
very smart, but she's definitely like, I'm going. Thank God Dina's there. I don't.
I
She
know.
would not have made it very far without Dina. Like,
I
let's be
know she
let's
would
be
not at
honest.
all. She wouldn't have any food, any medical supplies,
Nope.
just
Nope. Nope. Nope.
guns.
Just guns and her anger. Oh, Ellie.
Oh. Okay, so we kind of already talked about this, but what, based on the game, do you think will happen next week?
Um. Well, it'll probably be Seattle Day 2,
Yeah,
probably. Um. What will happen?
I think we're gonna get Nora.
I think so too. I didn't want to. It feels a little early,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not, because I think no, we have 4 more episodes after this. Three.
Three.
We have three. We have three.
Yeah,
Okay, so then yeah, then maybe it's not too early. I think you're right. I think we're gonna get Nora at this
yeah.
episode. I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't introduce spores yet, because I think it
Mm,
seems like they're going to. Because
yeah,
like I don't know how else they're gonna kill Nora without the
yeah,
spores, but
yeah,
um, but yeah, I think you're right. I think Nora's going to show up next episode.
yeah. I think so too. And I said I think so too. Like I didn't say. Sorry, it is 4 a.m. A little tired. No, here's how I think it's gonna happen, because we know that episode 6 is directed by Neil Druckmann,
Oh,
and
I did not know that.
and I've heard. Oh, sorry.
I love it.
By the
I'm so
way,
excited.
episode
Yay.
6 is directed by Neil Druckmann, and the actors and he have said that it's a very emotionally intense episode. And so I
Okay.
think that episode 6 is going to be the flashback to the museum and potentially other things.
Yeah.
And we're gonna. Oh, Olivia and I are gonna be together when we watch that episode. Actually,
Yes. Yeah.
so I'm very excited that we'll get to experience that together if that's what it is. So I think we're gonna have Nora next episode for episode 5, and
Yeah.
then when Ellie comes back, I think it's going to be similar to in the game where she is so shaken by what she's done.
Yeah.
And then, like, she's going to be telling Dina, that this happened, whatever. And then, if when she falls asleep or when she's just sitting there thinking about what she's done, she's going to have the flashback
Yeah.
to all of that.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Oh, that's going to be killer.
Oh my God.
Do you think they're going to, speaking of flashbacks, do you think, I mean, obviously we know they're going to do the museum one, the dinosaur museum one.
Yeah.
Do you think they're going to do any other flashbacks for Ellie, not for Abby yet,
Yeah.
from the game, other than definitely dinosaurs and definitely the porch scene?
Yes.
But do you think there'll be any other ones they might include?
Based on the trailer, I think we'll get Joel giving her the guitar.
Okay.
Yeah, so that in the game that happens immediately. As soon as he leaves from telling Tommy about what happened in Salt Lake City, he goes to Ellie's room, her little garage, and gives her the guitar and plays her the song.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be like maybe if most of the episode is in a flashback, then I think it's going to be like something happens, Ellie has a flashback, something happens, Ellie has a flashback. And so we'll get those moments, like pretty much everything we got in the game, just within that one episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that would make sense. It's going to be, I'll be happy to see Joel again, but I also will be very sad because those are beautiful scenes and they're.
Yeah. I remember playing the game just really quickly and thinking that like I wasn't going to see Joel again. And I was so upset. I was just like, you mean like that's all I get of him? I'm not going to see anything else. And then when we got that first flashback in the game, I was like, thank God. I've missed him so much.
So my mom this entire time, she's like, I asked her at the end of this episode, I was like, are you enjoying it even though like Joel's not around anymore? And she's like, yeah, I love it so much. And then I don't know, it came up with like the title scene or the title card or whatever. And obviously like Joel's face is there. And she's like, besides, I get to see him here every time. And every time I see a commercial, when I watch ER, I get to see his face. And so she has no idea the flashbacks are coming. And I so want to tell her, but I'm like, nope, keep my mouth shut. Because it'll be like you said, it's such a surprise. And it's like, oh my God, like, oh, Dad, he's back. Yeah. And it just adds to like the bittersweetness of those flashbacks and why they're so important for Ellie, but also why they're so important as like a player of the game or an audience watching the show.
Yeah, gotta give a couple more things of him.
Yeah, we have to.
Okay, so I think that's everything that we wanted to cover for this. Thank you, everybody who tuned in today, especially our guests for listening to us for the past hour. We will be back next week for episode 5. And then the week after that, like I said, Olivia and I are going to be together. Yay! So we might be in one screen next time.
Yes, we probably will be.
Yeah. I'm so excited. I'm bringing my shirt with me so that we can wear this together. It's gonna be a great time. In the meantime, if you have any questions or comments for us, feel free to hit us up on Blue Sky or TikTok by using the handle Temple of Geek. And if you want to check out some of mine and Olivia's other content, you can find me at Written in the Star Wars on TikTok, DannyS394 on Twitter/X, and Written in the SW on Blue Sky and Instagram. Olivia?
And you can find me on TikTok and on Instagram at Olivia Lupe Marie.
Perfect. Well, we cannot wait to be back to talk about episode 5 next week. We hope you'll join us then. But until next week, always remember that if you're lost in the darkness, you just got to look for the light.